Now again, the weekly signals turned back to bullish the previous week as we officially broke out in the weekly time frame. We've cleared 69,000. We broke this trend line. The bulls are back in control. Bears were back in control back over here, pushing prices back down, flipping signals, eventually back to bearish, back to bullish, and we've risen to this next level of resistance, which is the trend line from the 2021 highs and the trend line from the 2021 low, excluding the shadows in 2022 and including the peak here in 2024, and they intersect right there, and that's where we've stalled. Now, as we're stalling right here, we're forming a little head and shoulders pattern on the 4-hour chart. We've also reached extremes on the RSI in the daily time frame. Now, you could still form a divergence here and come back up and reach this again. If we do pull back, end up forming a divergence, or you can get a confirmation of a lower high, and this could mark a peak right here. The bullish case is we pull back and then we break up through this level and we keep going to about 110,000 or so, then reevaluate there. Price can continue. Bearish scenarios that the bears end up giving us a reversal around this area and eventually go back and take out 69,000 and the breakout point here and eventually drop below the moving averages. So again, we're going to be watching what happens at this resistance levels. But again, remember, the bulls are back in control. As long as they remain in control, prices can go higher. If the bears can flip it back to bearish, surrounding this area or just overthrowing it, possibly see a divergence develop on weekly signals and monthly signals, the RSI and the MACDs. As we're testing this level of resistance, we've reached extremes on the RSI. We formed a tiny little divergence with the peak with Wednesday's high. Little tiny divergence there. We could even say with certainty the Friday high, again the close, the RSI doesn't look at the little topping tail that formed there. It looks at the close down here. Even though the close was higher, there's still a divergence there, but it continued on to Friday, and we can include this area right here, again forming this divergence as of Friday's close, which was the closing peak there of that area so far. So again, we have a divergence either way you look at it, whether Wednesday's high or excluding the shadow there and Friday's high. Now we're into Saturday's session, have the extreme forming this divergence at that level of resistance in the weekly time frame. It was a divergence that marked these other tops and bottoms here, going all the way back to the March high. Probably going to see something very similar to the March high right here. We overthrow that level or sell off and go back up to the trend line just slightly higher as the trend line moves to the right on the chart there, remains to be seen. But if we can clear it above it, then that would be a sign of strength. Pull back and then do it, or sell off for a little while and correct and then do it at a later date. So we'll be watching. But again, the bulls are in control, but we're now at resistance. We'll be watching. So again, as we hit that trend line, we're at extremes. We're now forming a little head and shoulders pattern in this formation right here, or a possible 3 drives to a high. Already hitting the trend lines in the weekly time frame. Again, as we're hitting the trend line, we're reaching extremes on the RSI in the daily, slamming up into this trend line here in the weekly. And as we're hitting this weekly, we're forming a little head and shoulders top in the 4-hour time frame. Now, it could be a 3 drives to a high if we go higher, where you get 1, 2, 3, and that would overthrow the trend lines. But if the peak holds here with our negative divergence that formed in the 4-hour time frame, then again, if the head and shoulders plays out, we don't move above Wednesday's high, and we get a lower high with the rally on Friday, and here now on Saturday, we're possibly carving out this right shoulder here. We're down about 0.2% right now, but again, we've had the rally and sideways, and now we're to turn down with the Saturday session, but with the Friday and Saturday session, we have a possible right shoulder here, and again, still could turn into a 3 drives to high if we exceed this level. We'll be watching. If that's the case, it would turn into a multiple point diversions here on the RSI. Again, I told you to be watching for diversions. We got it here, and now it's formed at major resistance in the weekly time frame. If this pattern plays out, then we'll be watching our 50, our cloud, our 200 period here in the 4-hour time frame. Again, the chart is still very bullish, but again, we're slamming into major resistance. So again, there might be a pullback or a reversal. The 50 is still above the 200. They're pointing up. The head and shoulders doesn't complete. Again, you could still go higher and get a 3 drives to a high. So we'll be watching again. That happens, we could overthrow those trend lines for the short term in the weekly time frame. We're at extremes in the daily. We've had the diversions in the 4-hour time frame, all as we slam into those trend lines at extremes in the weekly time frame. If you look at the MACD here, again, the diversions right here is giving us a sell-off. Again, we might get a larger diversions for 3 drives to a high and overthrow that area, or again, break down. If we sell off, we could still go back up and make new highs and form a divergence, a larger divergence on that daily chart. So do keep that in mind. But they are suggesting that we're going to get some kind of pullback or maybe the start of a reversal at that level of resistance in the weekly time frame. Again, if I zoom out here on the 4-hour chart, you can see on the MACD and the RSI, divergences have marked tops and bottoms over and over again. I've marked them here. This divergence might evolve into a larger divergence, as I've said, like we had over here, or like we had over here, multiple point divergence. Or if we do get the sell-off, then again, get a pullback, a reversal, and if we get a pullback, we can go back up and make a new high and possibly form a divergence on the RSI in the trend line again, or even overthrowing it. Great Scott, did you hear what I said? We can overthrow the trend line in the weekly time frame. We'll have a bearish scenario, get a topping tail or something like that. A scenario, we got to be able to clear that level, stay above it, and that could take us to the 110,000 area on Bitcoin, above 100,000. Again, the 50 is above the 200 with Bitcoin. It remains above the 200. Price is above both at the moment as we hit resistance. Parameter is in positive territory. It rolls over. It might mark a peak, or again, a divergence might develop. Watch the weekly resistance. Do we end up clearing it eventually, or do we pull back, divergence, start a reversal, or do we pull back and eventually clear that area? Bulls are in control. Until that changes, Bitcoin could go higher. You get a pullback and just still try to go higher unless the bears can regain control. Weekly signals still remain bullish from the previous week. The bulls are back in power. After the 52,000 low, again, our momentum signals turn bullish shortly thereafter. Trend signals are bullish. They got to be able to remain that way. The risk is that we get a divergence developing surrounding resistance levels in the weekly time frame, and that reversal rather than a pullback. Bulls are in power. The signals remain bullish. Possible divergences on a lot of oscillators, not just the RSI, but a lot of them. Again, the divergence marked the March peak. Again, a larger divergence marking whatever the next peak may be. Just something worth paying attention to. Doesn't have to, as a reversal, it could just be a pullback, but it is something to be aware of because that's what happened back over here. So we'll be watching the resistance levels very closely. Weekly signals bullish, balance of power back to bullish, rainbow cloud back to bullish. Balance not turning up yet, but again, back to blue. So again, we'll be watching what happens with the next sell-off that we get. Bulls are in control. As long as the bulls are in control, we can go a whole lot higher. And if we clear trend lines, then you can go to the 100,000 to 110,000 area. Bulls can end up clearing the trend lines in the weekly time frame. But with the previous week's close, seen trending signals all begin to turn back to bullish in the weekly time frame. Now they have to remain that way. As we're hitting resistance, we're getting some price exhaustion with sequence counts and things like the RSI in the daily time frame reaching extremes, showing again price exhaustion. Weekly charts back to bullish. The previous week's close, the bulls are in control. The weekly time frame with Bitcoin. In the weekly time frame, this is the momentum. It turned bullish after a 52,000 low. It remains bullish. Just looking at longer term momentum here. Saw momentum turn bullish first in the weekly time frame, and then the trend signals after that as momentum remains bullish. Saw signals turn back to bullish at the 52,000, 53,000 level. We've had some pullbacks along the way. Talked about these, and then our breakout and our back test. We've seen momentum turn back to bullish each time, and again, we bounced off of the 100 period moving average. Right here that we were going to bounce off the 100. I'm a big believer in the 100 period. When you're above the 100, good things are happening. When you're below it, bad things are happening. You're watching these resistance levels over here. First 68, 69,000, then 70, 71,000. We cleared those levels. We're watching to see if we can get above the 77, 78,000 level. We did that. Signals remain bullish. Again, look at the momentum line. Still bullish at this point. We've been getting the red circles appearing up at these highs, warning, hey, a top might develop around that resistance level, but so far that's the only signal. There's no other bearish signal. The bars reflecting momentum remain green. The momentum line remains green. The trend remains bullish. The balance of power in the daily time frame remains bullish. So again, we're watching closely the trend line of resistance, the trend lines of resistance in the weekly time frame. Signals begin to revert back to bearish, and if so, we get just a pullback, or is it a reversal? You still have a very good chance that diversions will develop in the daily time frame there on the RSI. Here I have the impulse line. It will likely turn before the momentum line. The impulse line is the impulse is more sensitive, but it's still bullish. And again, we don't have any topping signals yet at all. If we start getting some volatility, maybe they show up after we start seeing a little bit of volatility. But again, everything bullish. The ribbon here, the cloud, bars reflecting. I have the bars reflecting the trend here. They're still green and represents the short-term trend, still pointing up, still bullish. So again, my signals, we pull back. We got the back test. We're going to go higher, and then to be watching, see if we 4,000 or 5,000 above, but we were predicting a move above the March peak, went 4,000 or 5,000. Some weakness that would be bearish in the weekly time frame. A strong close, which we ended up getting in the weekly time frame, has given us this rally. So again, clearly putting the bulls back in control in the weekly time frame the previous week. Talked about a brand new divergence developing here, and again, momentum, and we could see something similar on the RSI indicators in the daily time frame, but no topping signs yet. As we're hitting resistance, we'll be watching to see if we get it, and I'll be watching to see, does the momentum line on the other chart begin to turn? Does the impulse line right here begin to turn, which again will likely be the first to do so, start getting some kind of sell-off. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the indicators, you like the charts, let me know that by supporting the channel today. I don't have any sponsors, direct relationship with you. You can follow the link below. It'll take you to a secured site, and you can donate any amount you want. If you can make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. Please consider partnering with me by supporting the channel today. I thank you. Bitcoin for the week is up 13%. It was up higher than that at the highs, but at the moment, that's where it's at. As we move towards the close of the week, here we are on the Saturday session. Continuing to watch the indicators on the weekly chart. Again, we have a possible divergence, very similar to what we had over here, a triple divergence. You had a peak here, then later on, this was in March, and later on in November, you had a peak here, and two important peaks in 2021. Here we had this divergence in, say March over here, April. This was very similar in March, and then now here we are in November, just like we were here in November. And again, got a possible divergence. It may not be done yet. Up going a lot higher before it finishes. We may see a pullback and then see it continue on higher. It is something important to be watching, but the bulls are in control, and we've come up to these resistance levels, so we'll be watching. we get a pullback or the start of a reversal. Just going back here to this chart and the weekly time frame I told you to watch to see if we close strong or weak. Over here, we closed weak and we tried to get above the broken trend line and 69,000. We dropped back below them. Then the following week, we got a strong move with the presidential election rally. We are getting a pullback, back test of this, and again, that we would likely rally. We cleared 77 and 78,000. That would be a strong bullish move. If we went up, 4 or 5,000 above this peak, like over here, and stalled out, then that would be a sign of weakness. The stronger move, and we moved up into the 90,000 range now, hitting our next level of resistance. So the bulls did get a strong close last week. We'll see if they get a strong close this week surrounding this trend line. Again, we do have that head and shoulders pattern there on the 4-hour chart that I'll be watching over the weekend into Sunday's close for the week on the weekly chart. Again, an important thing to note that if we clear this level or don't immediately get a big sell-off, you got a potential 9 count developing next week in the weekly time frame. Currently, we have bar 8. Bar 8 may be the high of the count. Bar 8 or 9 have to be the high of the count. Sometimes you go a little higher, but it does show price exhaustion. Let me show you. As we're hitting that trend line of resistance in the weekly time frame, we're getting this week an 8 of a 9 count. Again, 9 counts show price exhaustion. Sometimes you have the 8 or 9 bar be the high of the count. Other times you get the 9 count and you go a little bit higher. Here we had a 9 count complete over here, but it was never perfected. Bar 6 was the high of the count. We still got a 33% sell-off. A perfected count and have more power to it. But again, this could show price exhaustion with Bitcoin. It could give Bitcoin a pullback. It could give Bitcoin a reversal. And again, if it's just a pullback, then the bulls will remain in control. If it's a reversal, the bears will regain control. We'll be watching. But we've had this clear breakout here above the trend line right here. And again, above 69,000. This is all bullish stuff. Told you right here to be watching as the bulls and bears fought it out. We had a rally, daily time frame, and then a back test. And I told you we were going to move higher. Watching the 77, 78,000. If we cleared that, clear sign of strength. If we failed there, that would be weakness. We clearly hopped above that area and continued this week the rally. So we'll be watching. The bulls are back in control. We may back test this trend line in the weekly time frame. And in order for this whole thing to fall apart, we have to eventually end up dropping below this dotted red line and the trend line right here at the 68,000 level. That's where the trend line is, and the 69,000 level is where we had the breakout from the 2021 high. So we have an 8 of a 9 count here in the weekly time frame as we're slamming up into that resistance. And it could be bar 8 is the high of the count. Got to be above the bar from 4 bars ago next week on the 9 count. So again, we can't drop below this 1, 2, 3, 4. We can't drop below this bar right here. So the odds favor, unless we give it all back the last 2 weeks of the rally, that you're probably going to complete a 9 count. It may not be the high of the count. It may be bar 8. If the 9 is the high of the count, we can break through that resistance, maybe get a topping tail before selling off. And again, you go just a little bit higher than the 9 count to find a bottom. If the count does not complete, we got to get a big sell-off. So the count is probably going to complete unless we get back the last 3 weeks of gains. And I watching this bar right here, and the close actually was right here. So it's actually, you got to come back below the trend line in order to not have that count play out. And I think I marked the upper peak a second ago. It's the down here at the close. So 8 of a 9 in the weekly time frame. On the daily chart this week, we got the completion here of the 13th 9 sequence count reversal signal. So again, we're at major resistance. We've reached extremes on the RSI in the daily time frame, as we saw earlier in the video, and here we have a 13.9 developing there. So again, a good chance you're going to get some kind of pullback surrounding that trend line. 9 count developing with the bar 8 in the weekly time frame. Here we have a double sequence count signal. Now again, as I've said, these counts, you don't get them and say, oh, it's the top or that's the bottom. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you get the 9 count, you go a little bit higher. Here we formed the divergence at the March peak. Here, it marked the bottom. Here, we got that marking a peak. We went a little bit higher and formed a divergence. Sometimes you go just a little bit higher, and then you get a turn. Other times you get that marking a turn immediately. But it does show price exhaustion, and these 9 counts have marked where we got turns, or shortly thereafter got turns down, up, down, back up, down eventually to here, and then back up to here, the pullback here, just giving us a pullback, and now a trend extension here. They do a good job. Now again, sometimes it's just short-term pullbacks right here, or counter trends right here, but eventually, again, which were followed by trend extensions, but again, some major turns and some minor turns. Warned you about this on Tuesday. We got the 13 count, and then I told you that we would have by Thursday, which in my last update, I showed you the 9 count was developing there. Friday, we rallied up a little bit. Again, possible head and shoulders or 3 drives to high on the 4-hour chart. If we have Wednesday's high hold, then again, you get a lower high. You can see that pattern breakdown on the 4-hour chart that I talked about earlier. But a 13 fall by 9 is a reversal pattern. It is showing price exhaustion. That doesn't mean we can't go a little bit higher. We may, but again, it is possible that this produces a reversal or a pullback. And if we get a pullback, you can set up that larger bearish divergence on the daily chart. Do we have to form a divergence on the daily chart? No. You can. We stall at that trend line of resistance, weekly time frame, or end up trying to go back up to it. So just some things to be aware of. Again, signals, the prices are getting very tired, and we're seeing the extreme on the RSI. We're seeing the extreme with the divergence on the 4-hour chart, forming a possible head and shoulders or 3 drives to a high. So again, good chance we're going to get some kind of pullback in the trend lines of resistance right here in the weekly time frame. And even if, like I said, even if we pull back, we still may come back up and, overthrow this level, hit this other trend line or whatever, get a topping tail and turn back down. You can still form a divergence surrounding these levels on the daily chart if we see the RSI set up a divergence. Bitcoin's moving higher, the dollar's moving higher. One of them is wrong. Normally have a negative correlation. We got back-to-back reversal bars with the dollar on Thursday and Friday. The dollar is forming a negative divergence on the RSI and on the on the histogram and other indicators. It is forming. The MACD's gone higher, but other indicators like the histogram are forming negative diversions. Prices going higher, the indicators making a lower high. As we're getting a hanging man candlestick on Friday, a topping tail in the form of a shooting star on Thursday. So again, there could be a bigger sell-off. Once we start seeing the dollar turn down, Bitcoin's positive correlation with it at the moment could take Bitcoin down as well, allow maybe the head and shoulders to play out, the reversal off the weekly trend lines of resistance, and again, the RSI reaching extreme on the daily charts. The thing about this, though, to be watching, this positive correlation continues with the next Bitcoin sell-off. If they both start pulling back, does it break? Bitcoin peaked in 2021 and we sold off with Bitcoin. The dollar surged. Long-term negative correlation. Right now, it's short-term positive. They're both getting this surge at the moment here. And again, the dollar is at horizontal resistance. It's getting a hanging man candlestick. On Thursday, it got a topping tail. You get back-to-back reversal bars. So again, we'll be watching to see what happens with the dollar going into next week. The dollar is likely going to go to this upper channel. And again, the signals, stochastics already bullish and pushing above 50. We'll probably see the MACD eventually turn up. We could pull back first, but eventually get divergences on the MACD and the RSI in the monthly time frame rising up. And again, in 2021, when Bitcoin peaked, dollar was just getting above the 20-month moving average and surged, and Bitcoin tanked. So if we see the same thing happen, where the dollar comes back and backtests the trend line of the breakout right here, then again, it could be on its way higher. And again, long term, Bitcoin and the dollar go back to a negative correlation. Dollars come right up to this level of resistance right here, and those candles. We'll see if we continue or if those candles produce. Those candles are meaningless, I showed you in the daily time frame, unless they're confirmed and get a follow through. Candlesticks have to be validated. But here Bitcoin has broken out of this trend line and back tested it, found support at the 200-week moving average and the support zone, and then it broke out of this trend line that you saw in the monthly time frame. And again, this is a trend line that we could back test right here before going higher. If those candlesticks give us a sell-off, they are validated. But the breaking of these trend lines and now this level here would be problematic for short-term bullish case with Bitcoin. We have a short-term bullish case already in play right now that evolve into a longer-term bullish case. If so, the dollar has to collapse below the 200-week moving average, not break out and back test. So again, this is problematic for a longer-term case. Now, when the dollar broke out previously, downtrend and then cleared overhead resistance, the dollar eventually surged and Bitcoin and the NASDAQ topped. So something worth paying attention to here. We don't back test this level, those candlesticks don't play out. Maybe we come up here and then we back test this horizontal level, something similar to that happened over here. If we do it now, then we can back test this trend line here. So just some things to be aware of with the dollar. Surging, Bitcoin surging. One of them is wrong. Which one will it be? Long-term bullish case, the dollar has to collapse below the 200-week moving average, take out this low, and just completely collapse. That's for the long-term bullish case for Bitcoin. During the run-up in 2021 with Bitcoin, the dollar collapsed in the bullish phase.